Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Mike, and in this video, we're going to be going over a beginner's guide to using the Kusto Query Language in Azure, or KQL as the most common acronym that we use for it. So this will be my first video on the channel, kind of going away from traditional PowerShell stuff. And I kind of thought about it because I've been doing a lot of Azure training lately, and this is like a command line language that we could use within there. So it may not be exactly like a full-featured language, like maybe .NET or Python or Java or something like that. But it is something that's going to come in handy, especially for people who are doing monitoring, auditing, security compliance, other things that we might be using within Azure. So you see it a lot in the Azure administrator classes, the Azure security classes, the security analyst classes. So you do see a fair amount of it out there. So I figured I'd throw together a few videos. This is going to be one of a few that I'm going to do, looking at KQL and how you could easily get started with it. Right? So we're going to have a look at getting started with KQL, running simple queries, filtering results, creating calculated columns, sorting results, and using the project and the summarize operators, kind of what we have in store here. All right. Now, one of the things I do want to say up front here, for those of you that may do a bit of your learning just by using internet search engines, googling around, things like that, one of the things I will warn you of is if you kind of Google for KQL, you will get some results that come back for keyword query language. Um, so again, let's say that again. Keyword, Key, keyword query language. So that is a query-based language that we use within Exchange and SharePoint for looking at doing like e-discovery searches and things like that. So it does have the same acronym. It still lives in Microsoft products, but please don't confuse that with Kusto Query Language, which is what Azure is using. Right? So that's what this topic is going to be about here. Kusto Query Language. So I remember when I first saw it, I do a lot of used to do a lot of Exchange work. So keyword query language was something that I was very familiar with. And when I first saw the acronym, I'm like, oh, perfect. Azure has that as well. But nope, it's a different language. So let's go ahead and get started here. So let me switch over to my desktop here. And on my desktop, I have an Azure portal open. And I basically want to first show like how we get started with this. So when we look at KQL, it is um, basically it's a query language, if you will, that in essence, I hate to say this, but it just does queries, right? So if you're coming at this from, let's say, SQL, sequential query language, SQL does queries like it does, searches or selects. You can add things, you can modify things, you can delete things. So SQL, WMI, those types of query languages, you can do more than just query, let's say. Whereas KQL is just that. It is read-only requests to process data and return results. So you're not making changes, you're not adding things, you're not deleting things, you're basic querying of information that's already there. Now, with that being the case, what kind of information are you querying? So with KQL, you're basically querying a few different, let's say, areas within Azure. So there's the log analytics workspace, which I'll show you in a moment here. There might be queries you do for Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Microsoft Defender 365, or Azure Sentinel. So ultimately, these are all products that you store log information in. And depending on how much log data you're storing, how many different products you want to store that log data for, that's in essence what we're querying. Okay. So, like for instance, if I was in, let's say, Azure Active Directory, let's say. So if I go into Azure Active Directory, scroll all the way down here till I find Diagnostic Settings. This is where you can configure uh, Azure Active Directory to log for you. So you can go add diagnostic settings, pick what information you want to log, and then where you want to send it to. So in this case, if you want to query using KQL, you're going to send that information to a log analytics workspace, where you could then specify what log analytics workspace you want to send it to. So I happen to have one set up here as a demo, Law1, LAW1. Okay, if you don't happen to see one there, you can very easily make a log analytics workspace. So if I go to all services, let me just okay that. If I go to all services and I search, just type in a log on the search here, you can see log analytics workspaces. And you can see I have one here, but I could just easily go up to create, and that will go ahead and make one for me. So I could pick a resource group I want to put it in, give it a name, what region you want to put it in, and away you go. Now, once you have one made, so let me just go back and look at one that I already have here. So let's go back to Log Analytics Workspaces. Um, Once you have one made, you can also go into it within this agents management area right here. And that would allow me to download a this Azure Monitor agent, um, and be able to use that on computers that you want to send your log information to this log analytics workspace. Okay, so you can make one, different products within Azure, like Azure Active Directory or an Azure storage account, you can configure them directly to send their logs to a log analytics workspace. But other products like Sentinel, Defender 365, Defender for Cloud, you point them again to a log analytics workspace you want to use. And then lastly, if you have individual VMs, whether those VMs are within Azure or your on-premise environment, you can also download this agent and pay attention to the workspace ID, the primary and the secondary key, and have individual VMs send their log information, like the normal stuff that would be going into Event Viewer, like your security log, your system log, your application log, have those be sent up to Azure into a log analytics workspace. And you can then query those results through KQL using Kusto Query Language. Right? So that's how we can get some things into a log analytics workspace to then be able to query. Okay? It's kind of difficult to query when you have no data there to begin with. Now, if you're wanting to first of all play around with this stuff, and maybe you're not comfortable using your production Azure subscriptions, if you will, Microsoft does put out a demo environment that is kept alive that anyone with an Azure login can log into and basically do queries against. Okay, so that the link for that is aka.ms/LA demo. Right, so that's where we would be going here. So again, let me just kind of show that. aka.ms/LA demo. Right, so that's where we're going. So I already have that open on another browser tab here. And this is basically the environment that you arrive at. All right, now a couple things I want to do just to familiarize myself with this environment. This is kind of like, thinking about the basics of it. Is we could look on the left side here. Let me turn on my highlighting tool. So I can, kind of look on the left side here. And this area, you could see what tables are present in the log analytics workspace that you're using. So again, I'm using this Microsoft demo environment. So you'd want to make sure if you're using the demo environment, that's fine. But if you're, querying your production stuff, that you're actually looking at the correct log analytics workspace. So I could see what tables are available. So these would be ones that your subscription is actually collecting for you based on settings that you have configured. So if you configured Azure Active Directory to send logs here, if you configured individual VMs to send logs here, Azure Sentinel to send logs here. So you could expand each of these areas. Like if I expand security and audit, I will see that there's a bunch of different tables available here. So there's like the security event table, the update table, the protection status table. And if I expand each of those, I can see what columns are available in those tables. Okay, so that can give me a good idea of what each table design kind of looks like. So this area here that's kind of giving you this information, this is kind of like your schema, right? How, what tables you have, what columns are available in those tables, things like that. Right? You could also see sample queries that are available. Okay, so if I wanted to kind of look at, failed operations, I can double click that and you'll see that that query kind of dumps right into the editor here that I can then execute if I wanted to. So I'm not going to right now. Let me delete that out. But that can give you an idea of some sample queries, some sample functions here that are present, as again a place to begin. All right. So if you wanted to do that. Okay. Now also, I do have let's see here, a couple links to show as well here. So one of these is this link right here, and the two links to the two pages I'm showing, they will be in the description for the video. So the first one here is this Kusto Query Language overview, which is pretty much everything. If you wanted to go through it all, kind of looking at the left navigation here would be a great place to begin, right? So you got the overview, quick reference guide, um, tutorial, samples, right? As some decent information that's in here. Okay? If you wanted to have a look at this information, I'll be referencing this a couple times throughout this video as well. The second link is for those folks that are familiar with SQL. There is a SQL to Kusto cheat sheet that Microsoft publishes out. So basically, like if I come down and look at this, it'll show a SQL query and then what the matching Kusto query would be. So if I have some, database folk who are very familiar with SQL, this might be a good, alternative, right? If you did this in SQL, this is what Kusto would look like, right? Something like that. So that could be, again, a good reference for looking at information as well. So again, the links for both of these two, the overview and the Kusto cheat sheet, I will have in the description on the video. All right, so back to the demo environment here. And, like if you want to begin with it, so when you're looking at, let's say, the tables here, you can see the different tables available. Let's say, for instance, if I wanted to query something here, maybe we'll, maybe look in some of these. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know. What might make a good one to begin with here? Um, let's say, let me go into security and audit. Um, so how about, I don't know, security event? Let's maybe pick that. So let's say that's a table that I want to query, right? So I could just go ahead and type the name of that table in here. Okay, so I could do security event, and you can even notice that there's a very good like IntelliSense happening here. That will show me, hey, you're starting to type this in. We think you mean one of these things. So I could just like click security event and notice how it kind of finished that line for me. So let me do that again. So I just type the beginning of the table I want to see, and I could either hit enter because it's currently selected. I could do up and down arrows to select what I wanted, or just click it, and it'll fill that in for you. And then add a pipe character, and then if you wanted to add other things on. So let's say in this case I did not. So if I just wanted to query that table, I could go ahead, type it in, click run, and eventually, this is a huge table by the way, eventually it will show some results for me. All right, so we'll kind of talk a bit here on how to make this a little more efficient here, but I just want to show that sometimes queries can take a while because some of the information there could be a lot. So for instance, if we look here, you can see that this returned right down on the bottom here 30,000 results, and that's just that's not everything that's in this table. That just happened to be the result set that was returned. And if I wanted to kind of resize what was happening here, I could, scroll through the first page of this. Oh, hey, that's a lot of information. And then scroll this way to see all of the columns that are present. Right? But one thing that is kind of finicky about KQL is it is case sensitive on some things. So notice security event and notice how it has the S and the E obviously capitalized for security and for event. So if I just type this in all lowercase, okay, and I try to run this, it's not going to like that. Okay, so there is some case sensitivity to some of the operators, functions, table names that you're going to be typing in here. So that's why it might be important to let the IntelliSense kind of help you out, if you will. Um, so you could even tab complete too. So I just hit the tab button there to basically, make sure the case is correct. Right? Now, another thing you might want to do, and this brings us to like our first operator that we're going to be talking about here, and that would be the count operator. Right? So what I could do is I can use a pipe and then send this to count. And count is lowercase. Everything is lowercase there. And if I just run to this, notice how quick of a result I get. Snap of a finger, right? And you can see how much information's actually in here, right? So it's 456,000 rows in this table, right? So count's particularly helpful if you're trying, like let's say you write what you think is the best query in the world, and you happen to be using a table that doesn't have any data in it. Your query is not going to work, right? So I always kind of find it, like I don't know, kind of stupid, if you will, but it makes sense. Make sure maybe there's data in your table before you ever do anything else with it. Okay, and count can easily do that for you. Right, so another thing you could do is just look at the beginning of a table by using the limit operator and specify how many rows you want to see. Like maybe just show me the first 10 rows, and I run it. So it's a quick query. It returns 10 rows of data, and you can see exactly what it's up to, right? So that again gives me an idea of the data that's in a particular table. Okay, so count and limit are very handy when you're first wanting to see like what information would be in a table. And let's say like you're wanting to make sure you work with a table that actually has information in it, right? So let's maybe go find something that I know is empty. um, let's see what's one that I know is empty. Azure Activity, yeah, I don't think this one has anything in it, so let me go throw that up here into the query window. So Azure Activity, and if I just pipe this over to count, you'll notice that it is in fact showing a big old goose egg, a big old zero. So that's obviously in this demo environment, that's not going to be a table you're going to want to play around with, obviously. All right. So let's go back to, let's say the security event table, because that's definitely got some information in it. So that was under security and audit and security event. So I can just double click it and it just adds that in there. Right? Now, when you see a lot of KQL queries, they tend to bust up each line uh, every time you're going to do a pipe where you're generating something and sending the results to something else, like I do something like here limit 10. I go ahead and I run that, and the output of this kind of gets sent to be the input for this, right? So this is acting on whatever was produced by over here. Okay, so it's almost like a little bucket brigade where you have whatever this is producing kind of, throwing its data over the wall, and this is then acting on that data. So that's kind of what the pipe character right there is representing. If you're not familiar with the pipe character, it shares the same key as the backslash on your keyboard. So it's shift backslash. So he can show like this, but what's very common with KQL for whatever reason is they normally carried return and have the pipe start on a at the beginning of a line. Okay, so if you notice here, if I run to this, it'll do the same thing. All right, so whether it's like this, or it looks like this, it's still kind of doing the same thing. So me as a PowerShell person, I'm not comfortable seeing the pipe at the beginning of the line. So if anybody else is more PowerShell literate, feel free to throw a comment in there. Let me know what you think about it, because it definitely makes it doesn't look right to my eye. Because I've gotten so used to pipes being, at the end of the line, separating things in the middle like this. I guess it's just me being a bit old school. So anyway, so that could be our query here. Now, what's interesting is this whole area here does not represent one query. Okay, so like let's say for instance, I wanted to put something else in here. So let's say I want to do Azure activity and do account. Nope, not that. I want to do account. That's a separate query. So it's basically like if I run this, notice that's one query. And if I click up here and run, that's a separate query. Okay, so all of the lines of your query, there cannot be empty spaces, empty lines between them. Okay, so once you have lines connected, if you click in there, notice how it's kind of like you can see this like gray highlighting here. Notice that down there. And then when I click the mouse up here, see how that kind of all outlines in gray as well. Okay, so that kind of shows that those two lines are grouped together as a single query, and the run button will kick that off. Right? If you wanted to use that. Okay, you could also there's shortcuts as well. I know some people like their shortcuts. Um, so there is, oh man, there is a hotkey in order for querying as well. Um, shift shift enter will do a run query as well. So if I like highlight this and do a shift enter, that'll basically execute it. So that might be helpful for people who are like, if I just move my cursor up and do shift enter, it runs that query. So for people whose hands are more on the keyboard, you don't have to click that run button up here. So shift enter would do that for you. Okay. So now let's talk about filtering. So in filtering, let me bring up this here, where we go back to samples here. And so there's a bunch of comparison operators that we could use. So for instance, if we see here, we see like for instance, there's a double equal sign. That's the equal comparison. The exclamation point and equal, that's the not equal. equal and the tilde, whatever you want to call that. That's your equal, and then the exclamation point and the tilde, that's your not equals. Okay, so why do they have equals and not equals twice? Well, two of them are case sensitive and two of them are not. Okay, so pay attention to this case sensitivity. There's a lot of that happening here. So there's a whole bunch of other comparison operators when you're looking at data that's in strings. So these are string comparison operators, but those are things that are there. So if you're doing a double equal, that is a case sensitive equal. Right? So it is paying attention to the case of the letters, uppercase versus lowercase. So basically, you want to make sure you're paying attention to that as well. So for instance, like if I happen to be looking at this security event table, let me just get rid of all this junk here. I'm looking at the security event table, and notice here, this is like, you almost think of this like you're looking at an event viewer, right? Of a computer. So there's event IDs. So if I wanted to look for some particular event ID, I can filter this table to find just those results. Only show me the rows where the event ID equals some value that you want to specify. So to do that, I can use, so I'll do a pipe here, and I could use the where operator. So I could do where, let's say I want to do event ID, and again, it is case sensitive, so make sure you do that correct. We'll do the double equal, right? And then let's maybe look for 4624. So in your security log, that's you get that event ID when an account is logged on. So I go ahead and I do that, and I select run. And that's probably going to take a little bit here. Right? But again, it does produce a result. Okay, so I can come in here. These are all the different times we're logging in, or something has logged into something in this demo environment. But it's still like 30,000 results. Oof. Okay. It is kind of crudely being filtered here. See this time range here, last 24 hours. I could change that to just say like last hour, for instance, or last 30 minutes. And let me run it again. And notice it went from 30,000 in the last 24 hours to now just 914. If you look, right down here, 914 results in the last 30 minutes. Okay, so that could be one crude way of filtering some results out here if you wanted to. You could also put kind of a crude filter here. Let me put this kind of in front of that first where here. Um, we can kind of throw a crude filter in here as well, where we'll say where, and notice there's a time generated column right here. So if I type time generated, and let's say time generated, I want greater than, let's say whatever the time was, I don't know, maybe I'll do 30 minutes ago, right? So I can use the ago operator, and then specify a time. So if I want 30 M for 30 minutes, right? And go ahead and run that. And notice, it's the same thing, right? And notice also now that I have kind of a time filter in my query, see the time range up here? See how it shows set in query? So that means it's obviously you're using something that's in the query now to do that for you. So if you're not familiar with what I did here, if you're using ago, there's also now as another time operator. That's where again some of these resources here. So if I come in here, let's see, let's go down here. Yeah, like see like date and time. So M is minutes, D is days, H is hours. So where I did my query, I had 30M, that would be 30 minutes. Um, so you could use the ago operator. You can use the now operator. So I could do now and say whatever the time is right now, take 30 minutes away from it and run, and that will produce pretty much the same result set. All right, so you could do kind of a couple different ways of achieving that. So you can use ago, you could use now. All right. Now, let's say, for instance, though, so I've kind of fine-tuned my query here. So I've got two filters happening. So we've got security event, and then first it's being filtered by everything that's greater than the time 30 minutes from right now up to current present, and then only showing event IDs that are 4624. Now let's say though I also want to filter on, like, look at this account type column right here. Okay, so if I look at this, there's a lot of machine here, but notice there's also user. So maybe I want to see the user stuff. So let's say maybe oops, I'll send this here. Let's do a carriage return to pipe, and maybe we'll say where account type equals, and then that's a string value. So we'll go ahead and we'll put in quotes user, right? Something like that. And we'll go ahead and run, and we get no results there. So what did I do wrong? Well, I used the case sensitive equal, and user was with a capital U. So if I wanted to change this to be not case sensitive, I could do the equal and then the tilde there, and then run, and then it doesn't care. Okay, so that is not looking at the case of the letters here, because notice user was a capital U. Okay, so that could be another way of doing a filter there. Right? Now, what if I also wanted, so 4624 is successful logins. Okay, so if we kind of look over here, yeah, an account was successfully logged on. 4625, the next log here, that would be ones that were failed logons. So maybe I wanted to filter off of that. So you could, if I wanted to grab both things, I could do this a couple different ways here. So I could do event ID equals 4624, or event ID equals, let me just kind of do a little cut and paste in here, event ID equals 4625, right? So I could run that. And that gets, both of those results here. Let's go to event ID 4624, and hopefully I'll see some 4625 in here as well. Oh, I guess there's no 4625s in the last 30 minutes of data. All right. Anyway, but that would grab them. All right. So that could be one way of doing it. And let me just copy this whole query here just to show a different way of doing it so you can kind of see them side by side. You can use a different comparison operator. So I could use where event ID in, and we can go parentheses 4624 comma 4625. Okay, so that'll show that, and let's maybe do minus 1h for an hour. Right, and so notice that worked as well. Right, so maybe 4624. Oh man, I don't have any failures. Oh well. Anyway, but that would show any if I had some, I swear. Uh, but that's how you could do it. So this could be one way if you have multiple values you wanted, or using the in operator here. Okay, so that could be another way of achieving that. All right. Now, another thing that we may wish to do would be to use let's say we wanted to uh, make a column of our own. Okay, so like let's say for instance going to kind of change gears here, and I'm going to go look at another table that we could query against. I'm going to do the this protection status one right here. Okay, so let me just throw that up there. And let's say protection status. So that's basically showing it's the output of Windows Defender when a computer checks in with getting its Defender status updates or pattern updates, I guess I should say. So let's say, for instance, if I did protection status and let's say, what do I want to do with it? So let's say, let's first of all, let's do a limit on it. And so we could see the different devices that are coming back here. And I could see like the event entry when they last, let's say, like checked in, right? Um, so I could see that for all of these. And 9/7, 10/17, 10/10, 10/16, 11/03. So what I could do is let's say if I want to know like how long ago that's been, is I could use the extend operator to basically make my own column that I'm adding in here. All right. So for instance, I can take protection status. So I can do extend. And I want to create my own property. So maybe I'll make my own property called time diff, which will be the time difference. And then what do I want to put in it? So I'm going to put something in parentheses, like I'm doing arguments on a method type of deal. I'll grab the current time, so I'll use the now operator, and subtract that from the time generated. So that's this right here. Okay, so this is going to make a new property, a new column, I guess I should say. And the result of it is going to be taking the current time whenever the query is run and minusing it from the time generated. And so that'll give you how long it's been since whatever that event happened. So if I go ahead and I run to that, now unfortunately it puts my column all the way um, to the other side here. At least oh no, here it is. Okay, it's right there. So time diff. So I can see that this particular event happened, 11 hours ago. Here's a 10 hour. Here's a 9 hour. So you can have an idea of when they last happened. So this time diff did not exist in the data. It's a column I'm making up on my own. Right? So that could be helpful if I wanted to, you know, put some of my own information that I calculate into this output. Now it's not modifying that table. Okay? Again, the table is read-only, at least from this KQL interface. But it's adding this to your results that are coming back. Okay, that's kind of the key term there. Okay, so your results coming back. Now, if you wanted to, now in this demo environment, you can't do it, but notice that there is a save there. So you could save the output if you wanted to. You could even do sharing, copy the query text, copy the results. So export, you could export out to a CSV. So you can get your results set out of here. So if you add a bunch of columns and some information and stuff like that, you can, get that out of here. That is in the cards. Right? So that's using extend. Now, in some cases, you may also want to, let's say, arrange the information. So there's order by and sort by, which could allow me to kind of arrange the output as we're looking here as well. They both kind of do the same thing, but I'll just use order by. So we'll do order by, and I'll use my time diff property, which IntelliSense already knows about. Okay, and go ahead and run that. And so now the largest result is showing at the top there. And if I kind of scroll the way down, the smallest result's right down there. So the smallest result was 9 minutes. And the biggest result was 23 hours, close to 24 hours. Okay. If you want the smaller result to be at the top, you can, normally it does a descending sort. So that means the bigger is at the top. You can type ASC there for ascending, and your smaller result will be at the top. Right. So if you're wondering how did that go to 10, well, it took me like 20 seconds to talk about that. So it was from 9 whatever to now 10 whatever. So that could be using order by or sort by, a couple different operators that would achieve the same result. Right? Now, another thing we might want to do is if we don't want all of this output here, like if I don't want all of these columns, I could, I'll get rid of the order here. I don't really need it. I could do a project. I can use a project operator and project what columns I want. So maybe I want time generated. Maybe I want to keep that, comma, time diff, keep that, and maybe I want device name. Okay, and those are the only columns I want. So if I run the query now, I just have those 3 columns in my results set. Okay? Now, if I wanted to as well, I could rename one of the columns here. So if I don't like device name, I could do something like maybe call it computer. Computer equals device name. Okay, something like that, run, and now notice I have a computer column instead of device name column. Okay, so you could use that if you wanted to. You could also, instead of using project, you could use project away to get rid of a column instead. So here's the project. If I wanted to, take it the opposite way, where you could say, I don't want to specify what columns I want to specify what columns I want to get rid of. So again, let's say before we do anything, let's run that query. And I have, all of these columns here. Well, maybe I just want to get rid of one of them. Like maybe I don't want OS name, right? So I could send this over to project away OS name. And then when I run, everything will be there except OS name. So that column was removed from the results. So with project, you're basically saying what columns you want to keep, and with project away, you're saying what columns you want to get rid of. So that could be handy to have, especially if you're going to want to take this data and send it somewhere else. Okay, so with project or project away, right? Okay, so last thing I wanted to talk about, at least in this video, just as kind of a beginner thing, would be the summarize operator. Right? So summarize, there's a lot you can do with it, but I want to just keep it to some of the basics here. So let's say, for instance, let's get rid of those project ones there. And let's say I wanted to see, so I had this particular query here, right? That was looking at time generated, show me everything from 1 hour ago to current time for event IDs 464, 465, and where account type equals user, and I'm using the case insensitive version of that, right? Okay, so now maybe I might want to see the different, maybe the different, the count of different things here. Okay, so let's say I'll come in, we'll do summarize count. Oops, I can type. Summarize count by event ID. Okay. And I'll go ahead and run to that. And it looks like in my results, there was only 362 and they were all event ID 4624. All right. So let's maybe take event ID. How about like one day? Okay, there we go. Now we got some good stuff here. So looking at it from one day, show me everything in the last 24 hours. I could see by counting the different rows have their event ID. Um, 4624, there's 8,000 rows that have that event ID on them, and there's 778 rows that have 4625. Okay, so that could be a good way of getting an amount that you want to use. Okay, so that could be like if you're not really going to want to sort through all of the individual results, like for instance here, where I was just running this query, and then you had saw me kind of go through here the event ID, and I was just looking for a 4625, right? And so that's obviously very cumbersome. I wouldn't want to sort through 9,000 rows doing that. So that's where the summarize could be nice here. So summarize by count using event ID. Okay, and so that way you know the quantities that are there. So there's 778 rows that have 4625 and 8,000 rows, 8,747 rows that have 4624. All right, so that's not too bad there. Okay, so that could also um, be handy. Oh man, I shouldn't have wiped that out. Let me do Control Z a few times here. I wanted my performance column back. So I'm hitting Control Z a whole bunch here. There we go. So let's say, for instance, where I have this one right here, where I did protection status, and I have the time difference, right? So I go ahead and I run that. And okay, so I've got the time difference, but that's showing time difference from like the same VM potentially, right? The same computer. So if I look over here, like see how this one and that's the same VM reporting in. Okay, so what I might want to do is I might want the results, but I want the most recent result for each device. Like for each device, I only want one entry. I want the most recent one. Okay, so that's another good use of summarize right there. So I could use another argument within it. So I used count before, but you can run summarize with the arg max, which would be find the property that has the most recent value. So in this case, I want, maybe I want time generated. So show me the most recent one. And I'm going to do comma star. What the star does is it tells, or the asterisk, it tells KQL to return all the rows that come, return all the columns that would come with this query here. If you don't have that, it would just return the time generated column, and that's not what I want. And then, so summarize by device name. So give me the most recent row for each unique value that's in device name. So this, like for instance here, I have jbox00. I will only see one entry for that, the most recent one. So if I go ahead and I run this, I could now see like, okay, here's device name, here's time generated, um, and time diff should be in here as well somewhere. Let's see, did it hide it at the back? Yeah, I put it at the back of the bus here. So let's maybe, let's use project. Project, let's see, device name and time diff. And we'll run that and we can see um, each VM, Okay, and like if we, notice there's going to be no duplicates here. So there's JBox 001, and the most recent one has it checking in, let's say 49 minutes ago. And JBox 10 checked in most recently 8 hours ago. And you could even then kind of do the order by or the sort by order order by come on order by time diff. And then, yeah, the one that has taken the longest to check back in is this guy right here, app FE00006B2, last checked in 21 hours ago. This one here, 21 hours, 36 minutes ago. And so our JBox 10, 8 hours ago, JBox 00, 49 minutes ago, and the most recent one to this SQL 01 checked in 9 minutes ago. DC 10, 20 minutes ago. So those are the 61 VMs in this lab environment that are reporting their protection status to this log analytics workspace. And so in the last 24 hours, um, I made my own property. I grabbed the the most recent value of time generated. So that would be the most recent one, the argmax. If I wanted the oldest, it would be argmin, M-I-N. Um, and then I wanted the most recent time generated for all of the rows that have the same device name. So basically what it does is it groups all the rows that have the same device name and finds the one that has the biggest value for time generated, and that's what shows in the results. So then I did project to just show those two columns out of the result set, and then just ordered the result set by the biggest value at the top by doing order by. All right. So that's using summarize. So again, you could do the summarize count that I did earlier to see just how much of some value you have in your result set. How many rows have this value? How many rows have that value? So you could do that kind of just to get a count of things. And the argmax and the argmin to just bring back results that have the biggest value of something or the smallest value of something. Okay, so that could be handy to do as well. All right. So that's just kind of a quick tour here through, I say quick tour, this video is going on 50 something minutes now, of the beginning phases here, the beginning parts of using Kusto Query Language or KQL. So I will put up a couple other videos in the near future here. One looking at doing joins. Like you have all of these tables here. Might be nice to join them together to be able to grab different information, more detailed results, more targeted results. And then there's also a bunch of other things that we could do within just KQL, just even on a single table if we wanted to. So using things like decount, count if, render, make set, make list, extractions, unions, um, parse operators. Okay, so there is some other stuff to do here. This is by far not everything, but just looking at kind of a beginning place, if you will. So, looking at getting started, using the demo environment, aka.ms/LA demo, running simple queries, filtering results, creating calculated columns. So that was using the extract operator. Did I say extract? Yeah, no, it wasn't extract, it was extend. My bad. Using the extend operator. So calculated properties, that's where you're making your own column and supplying what value you want to put in there. Sorting results, okay, that would be using sort by or order by. Using project to specify what columns you want to keep in the output, project away to specify what columns you want to get rid of, and then summarize using summarize count, summarize argmax or argmin to see the biggest values or the smallest values of all the columns that have the same, the same result or the same value in them. Okay, so that'll be it here for our beginner tutorial, and then be on the lookout for a couple more advanced videos coming out with KQL. So any comments, queries, questions, feel free to throw those in chat for me. And and I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in the next video.